I had a serious tumble a couple of hours ago.
That's what I'm saying.
But we didn't come in like a.
Well, I had my hip replaced.
Oh, that's right.
March 29th is due.
Time to get started.
Well, I took a step without my pain.
We call to order the meeting, the BZA meeting, May 11, 2022. Pledge allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donosky,
Present.
Chair Kinzinger is excused. Lasusa,
Present.
Gotzman,
Present.
Vice Chair Calnell,
Here.
Director Roshane,
Here.
Director Kelper.
Here.
Now we move to approval of minutes of January 12th of 2022 and May 11th of 2022. All four board members here were present at that meeting. You could vote for approval in unison on both if you'd like. Need a motion?
Did everybody have a chance to review these?
Yes.
Okay. I make a movement to approve the meeting minutes from January and March.
I second.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Those not in favor say nay.
Aye.
Thank you.
So for all of you who are in attendance, if you think that you may speak at all during this meeting, I'd like you to stand and take an oath to tell the truth. It's a lot easier to do it now than it is later, because then we'll have to stop later and come back to it. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
All right, thank you. You guys can have a seat. All right, and on to,
There are no changes to the agenda.
all right. On to new business, case number 1, which is BZA case number 01-2022, 1386 Glen Avenue. Applicant is Derek Stage, and owners. What?
To the left.
There you
Sorry. I apologize. All right, BZA case number 04-2022, 1451 Mulford Road. Applicant is Tara Stottlemyre. Owner is Scott G. and Tara Stottlemyre. And the applicant is seeking a variance from code section 1155.15D to erect a fence in the side yard or alley.
Is this where I Hi, I'm Tara Stottlemyre. We live at the corner of Mulford and Glendale. And we've had a chain link fence in our backyard since we bought the property. And we'd like to replace it with a wooden fence that's 6 feet tall in the same location as the chain link fence. One, replacing it with the new fence will look better and just improve the aesthetics all around. And we'd like to have some privacy in our backyard.
Staff report?
Yes, so let's see, first of all, I will say that we did add a variance as
specific variance that's not listed in the agenda. There's really two items at issue this evening. One is that the board is asked to review any fence that's adjacent to a street or alley for the side yard of a property. And the second is that this particular fence, the code allows fences that are 5 feet high, except in a few conditions where they need to be lower than that. It allows fences that are 5 feet high in most locations, including in this location. The 6 foot fence, 6 foot height is only really required between side yards or in the rear of alleys between properties, so not on a side yard facing an alley. So the request adds that subsection F with regard to the height of the fence. As the applicant noted, they are asking to replace the fence in the same place that it is in right now. It's about 2 feet in from the sidewalk, right? Which puts it about a foot in from the lot line. The design guidelines and the code both have a little bit different provisions carried in each one, but generally wood fences are preferred, and opaque wood fences are permitted. The fence, I think, generally meets all of those requirements. It's set in from an alley, and there's not really an issue with it blocking sight lines or anything, so there's no height, no problem with the height or the opacity of it from that perspective. With regard to the height, as I mentioned, the design guidelines state a preference for 5 foot fence, and the code also states 5 foot fences are permitted in cases like this. This is a 6 foot fence. The location as far as I mentioned, there's no, the fence stops, so the garage opens to the side yard, and the fence stops on the house side, if you will, of the garage, not the alley side, so it's set well back from the alley, and really isn't an issue from a sight line perspective. So those are the basic tenets. Given the location of the fence, there's no height issue. Some of the cases that have come before the board include a place where a yard is raised, it's very flat to the sidewalk, it is set back a couple of feet, and taken together, staff doesn't take any exception to the request, and always recommend approval subject to any provisions the board might want to review with the applicant.
Are you also replacing the fence, assuming that my directions correct, on the west side as well, to the, with this house on the other side?
Yeah, I think that's the east side.
The east, yeah.
There's two, they're very small sections. They're, like, I'm looking at it on this one. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
3 feet.
there's the 4 foot, but the length of the backyard, the long run between the properties.
Oh, between the properties, the neighbor put up a 6 foot wood fence.
That's what I was going, okay, yep, so there's a 6 foot fence already on that side.
Yes.
That those would be connecting to.
Yes.
I guess technically that being the case, do you know what the distance up from the house with the fence between the house and the side yard fence is?
You mean the distance between my neighbor's fence and my house?
No, from the back of your house forward to where that fence will be, do you know what that distance is?
To the one that has the gate in it.
Oh, so like the whole deep distance, like the size of the backyard? I don't
No.
follow.
The back face of your house,
Uh-huh.
if you were standing at that back face, how far from there to where that gate will be?
If you can see on the drawing, the distance from the back of the house to where the gate would be then coming forward.
Okay, hold on. All right, did you just show me this one with some colors
Yes.
on it?
The one
Okay.
that's 4 foot 10 inches wide. Towards the front of your house.
Just lost me. Oh, the gate, are we talking about the gate?
Yes.
Okay, got it now, sorry, what's the question again?
Do you know how far from the dimension from the rear of your house to where that gate and fence is?
Oh. No, but I think we could figure out the math from the landmark survey. So let's see, right?
It looks like it's probably in the 20-foot range from the survey.
Over here? Oh.
It's the distance for like a hosta, a grill, and or a garbage can. And the side entry door to our house would be on our side of the gate.
Where's the side entry door in relation to this, in relation to the fence?
Pretty close.
Does it just catch the side door? Is it just forward of the side door?
Forward of the side door, I mean, definitely within arm's reach.
That's pretty good.
And I was gonna say, I think our fence is even with the neighbor's fence right there, but I guess I really couldn't swear to that.
I'm using the 4-foot 10 dimension as a rough 5 as a scale, and as a result, I'm getting that it's about maybe 23 feet. Yeah. So the reason we ask, actually, I didn't catch this at all, is that there's another code provision that says that the 6-foot fences may be erected in the side yard, the rear yard, side yard location, no further forward than 10 feet forward of the rear of the main building. So that's another variance.
Oh, okay.
But if it's where the fence is now and your entry door is just forward of that, that is, functional question that allows the rear yard to be fenced and still have usability of that door, so, I honestly did not look at that issue. It would be, there's a 6-foot high fence next to it, it would certainly not burden the adjacent property. It is still well back from the front of the house.
By forward, just to be clear, the door would be inside of the fenced area.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we're
Yes.
assuming what you're saying, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So then that would add a variance, it is still only a variance to F because we already caught that piece with regard to the height. But the variance would now be both for the height and for the 10-foot forward of the rear yard, on the east side. So we just added the basic consideration standards for dimensional variances like this have to do with whether it's a minimum that's required to meet the, relieve the applicant from a strict reading of the code, and to deal with any idiosyncrasies of the lot, like the side door being in a certain location. Those would be the hardships.
Because it's forward of the garage, there's not a sightline issue, is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct.
There's not a sightline measurement, okay.
how close the fence is to the adjacent sidewalk, the one that's on the west side? Sometimes we find, some of us have found that 6 feet looks really imposing directly adjacent to a sidewalk. Have you thought about any other heights of a fence?
We thought about it a lot and went out and measured and, you know, looked at it. And like, the two goals of replacing the fence are to have a better looking fence and to have privacy in our backyard, specifically on our patio, which is in the little inside of the house there. And like when we're sitting in our patio, we're really, it feels like we're within like 10 feet of people walking by. And we would like, so 5 foot is, I'm 5'3", or we even measured, like 5 foot is still most people's heads, like, you know, from me to you or less while we're sitting on our patio, which is with our house and our lot, is one of our 2 outdoor spaces. The front porch we have and is open and accessible. The back is where we're ready to have more private conversations without heads so close.
And then your lot at this point is pretty flat, correct? Pretty
Very flat.
Okay. So really, and I think, looking back, just for reference, like what I'm thinking is, a lot of the other examples that you submitted, the fences are actually 5 feet tall for a portion of that. And then the top 1 foot has some carrying capacity to it, but a lot of those tend to be on a higher elevation next to the sidewalk, or at least like the ground is shifting on.
From looking around, some of those, especially the newer ones, they look to me like they're taller than me.
They look like that, and I think that's because I went around and I measured some of them too, because I thought the same thing. And I think a lot of them are that way, it's just that the ground is sloping up in that area. But a lot of them are 5 feet, and then like Director Culver said, to the 10 feet from the rear of the house, and then they go to 6 feet behind that. Because you're allowed to have 6 feet for the backyard.
What is the difference in this case between my backyard and my side yard? Like
So you have to kind of read the design guidelines and the code together. I would agree with you that there's not a completely explicit statement, which is one of the reasons the board has some evaluation opportunity in this regard. The design guidelines are quite clear that side yards facing streets, the preference is for 5 feet. The code itself is a little less clear. So you have a side yard,
like the yard is the side yard, so we don't have a backyard?
your side yard is, I don't know. Your side yard is exposed fully to the public view. And so one of the reasons the design guidelines looks for a shorter fence in that location, so they're not so imposing against the sidewalk. So some of the other cases are right up against the sidewalk, and some of those are, it's more pressure on the walk sphere, public sphere there. With this being said, in a couple of feet from the sidewalk, that's a little bit of relief from the height.
I do feel like, I don't understand the difference between the 2 yards, but it doesn't matter. Our tree lawn, which is on the other side of the sidewalk, is pretty deep. So I guess just aesthetically or naturally speaking, as you're walking down and our fence and yard is on the left, the street is on the right, that tree lawn, I don't think it's measured here, it's wide, I'm giving you measurements and household things, it's like at least 3 lawnmowers wide, and there's large mature trees there.
Yes. And I think that, for me, that makes a big difference. I know, I was thinking about this in relation to, we had a similar project about a year ago, and I think that the difference between this application and that one is that on that one, the front door faced the side street. So the front yard was the backyard was the side yard also. And I know we decided to go with a shorter fence on that one, but I think that given this location, I would be in favor of, and how far it is back from the road, I would be in favor of a 6-foot fence. Also, given the hardship of, on your east side, of having a door into your house, into your yard, that is, would like to be encompassed by that fence and gate. Do you have any questions, John? Any comments?
I'll take a stab at it, if that's all right. You have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
I motion to approve BZA case 04-2022 for variance on code 1155 1.15 D, E, and F regarding the fence regulations, specifically the fence height, as well as the portion of the fence that's 10 feet forward from the rear of the house on the east side of the property.
More than 10 feet forward.
More than
It's
10.
Approximately 23 feet forward.
So approving the distance being more than 10 feet?
It would be better worded to replace where the existing fence is. Because that also includes that distance.
Yes. To replace the existing fence.
Is there a second?
Second.
Denosby?
No.
Calno?
Yes.
Wasusa?
Yes.
Gotcha?
Yes.
You're approved.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the time.
Alright, moving on to the second case, BZA case number 05-2022, 1456 West First Avenue. Brenda Parker is the applicant, and owner is Bradley and Kelly Bauer. Ready?
Okay, this case is property at 1456 West First. This is a house that, believe it or not, already has a 2-story addition on it. When they designed the 2-story addition, they didn't do a great job in configuring the spaces. So the owners had asked me to help them come up with some reconfigurations of the first floor and the second floor to make better utilization of the space. And so we were able to accomplish that goal. Along with that goal came a door that wants to come out the side of the house to be able to go back to the garage versus the rear of the house. So coming out the side of the house requires a side yard setback variance to have that landing encroach into the side yard. So we're asking for a reduction of the side yard from 6 feet to 4'10" to allow for landing steps, and it's actually going to be a covered portico. That way when they're coming in from the garage, they have a place to stay dry while they're trying to unlock the door. So that's one of the variance requests, and the second variance request has to do with lot coverage. The lot coverage overage is an existing condition. We are adding a tiny bit to add this portico on the side of the house. However, the lot size is small, so it's only 5,200 square feet, and the required lot size is 6,000 square feet. So if the lot was the proper 6,000 square feet, they'd be allowed 2,400 square feet of coverage, in which case the project would comply if the lot size were the right size. So we are asking to address that condition though, so it would be a lot coverage increase from 40% to 45% due to the small nature of the lot. I think that is it regarding the variances. Oh, we do have aesthetic review. So it is a gambrel style house. It is not a very attractive house in its current state. And the owners are not fans of the gambrel style house. So we're transitioning it to more of a classic craftsman style house. And so that is part of the review this evening.
Staff report? Yes, so the applicant has done a lovely job of explaining, I think the request, and I just want to reiterate a couple of points and kind of go over a little bit of the context. If you look at the second page of the staff report, you get a sense of where this property is in relationship to Grandview Avenue. Fairly close, certainly within parking distance for folks who might want to come to Grandview Avenue. You also can see in the lower picture there on page 2 the existing home having had an addition put on it already at some time in the past. There's an existing parking pad back there, existing garage. The lot is fairly flat. It steps up just a few feet from the sidewalk. One of the considerations with regard to the lot coverage has to do with really the vast majority of that 5% overage has to do with existing conditions that the applicant didn't bring on themselves. The only addition to that lot coverage overage is the 21 square feet for the side entry, which is 0.004% over 40% by itself. So they're really asking for very, very little in terms of the variance for lot coverage. With regard to the side yard setback, one of the things that the fire department always considers is the distance between the homes and also the running distance of the variance. So this is a small porch that they would go around as opposed to the full length of the home asking for a side yard variance. So it's relatively small side yard variance in terms of not only the amount, the absolute amount that they're asking for, but also the distance that variance runs along the house. And then last, the aesthetic review. I don't think if they were recladding the house and it had been this style that we necessarily would have brought it for aesthetic review, but because the style is changing, I think that's a consideration, worth bringing to the BZA to consider within the context of the design guidelines. Certainly the changes proposed by the applicant are in keeping with the design guidelines that are out there for the community in general, very much sympathetic in terms of materiality and detail to the traditional construction neighborhood. There is also a garage change to the garage, so the existing roof would be removed, right?
Yeah.
And a new walk-up storage area very much similar or the same as what the board has seen a number of other times. It meets the parameters generally, but as a change, this is where you're first going to review. You can add that to the mix. There are no windows on a couple of sides of the garage, so that might be a consideration the board would want to weigh in on as well. Overall, we are recommending approval on the lot coverage on the basis of the hardships imposed by previous addition and reduced size of the lot. On the side yard setback, similarly recommending approval based on the hardship and the size of the lot and the fact that it's a minimal distance where that reduced side yard occurs. And then aesthetic review also recommending approval subject to any comments the board might want to address with the applicant.
house, is that the same footprint that what's there?
Yeah, we're taking the existing envelope and just reconfiguring the inside, but the outside is staying the same, except for this new little portico we're adding on the side. Same with the garage footprint's staying the same. It's a concrete block garage, so they're just taking the roof off and putting a new roof on.
And it's because we're adding square footage for the portico, now throws it into a lot coverage issue versus if they were not adding a portico, that would not be a concern.
Well,
That would be a new-
it's an existing condition, and there's no variance on record for it. The provisions may have post-dated when the work was done, or it happened for whatever reason, so it's documenting that the existing condition has been reviewed by the board. And then, as I mentioned, this 21 square feet is 0.004 of the 5%. So a very, really very small amount that this particular applicant is asking for.
Did the existing addition have, is there a permit on record, or was that too far ago?
I think it's more of a housekeeping item.
Right.
So we're just correcting something that may have not met in the past.
Just to understand the back porch a little bit better, you said, so the need for the doors now changed to come up the size because just of the reconfiguration of the living space, it just won't accommodate a rear exit.
Right, so they're trying to save as much yard space as possible. So, you know, when you slice down the middle of the yard, you know, with the new landing and the steps, it just takes up a lot more of the rear yard, which would take away their patio and grass space. So the side is just more accommodating.
Okay, and then the patio, that would be the new wood landing and steps, those steps will just go into the backyard into the grass?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What's the material for the new front of the house gonna be?
What was you saying? Are you using hardy or vinyl? We think it's a vinyl. With actual trim though. That's how we make the vinyl look nicer. As opposed to the vinyl trims, we use actually real trim.
For the front elevation, did you consider shutters for the front of it, on the windows?
So they're double windows, so I think they started out as single, and the owners are really trying to lighten up the interior of the spaces. So we changed them to double windows, in which case shutters don't really make sense at that point.
One might we did talk a little bit about some of the design guidelines aspiration, one of them being to be able to tell where the original home was. The applicant was willing to add at least a demarcation. The construction's already there, so there's not that much you can do. They're adding a trim piece at that location, so that, you know, it at least is registered on the outside where the original home was.
I think from an aesthetic standpoint, or aesthetic review, I think that there are a good number of elements of the house that are still present in the new design. And I do think the design modifications, including that band, the datum line at the upper level, are similar to other homes in the area. And are not necessarily a replica, but definitely reference other design projects. details that are in keeping with other homes in the area. I guess regarding the additional square footage, I understand the plan and how it would be helpful. I guess my question is, was there an attempt to look at the configuration without adding this additional square footage for the covered portico?
Yeah, we tried multiple arrangements. We just couldn't get everything integrated the way it needed to be to get everything in that tiny mudroom space. So the side entrance really was the only way to lend itself to get all the components in that mudroom that were hoped for. The nice thing about it too, I think, is that it helps break up that side elevation a little bit too, versus just, because it's a long wall along there.
I agree, and similar to what Director Culver said, I think that the dimension of this in relation to the rest of the house is very minimal. And I appreciate the effort to make that as minimal as possible, but I also, the lot is kind of shallow, and I appreciate the effort to utilize existing green space in the backyard and to retain that. And I think that covered portico does utilize some more space that would be similarly dead space on this lot.
There would probably be more green space because the brick patio would be narrower if the door does move, so there'd be more grass back there.
So is it going down to like a brick sidewalk, or?
There's an existing big brick patio there that's gonna remain.
Okay. And then lastly, I didn't see any mentions on your garage for the ceiling height on the storage level.
Do I not have it on there? Well, we know it's gonna be 6'3" inches.
Thank And regarding the aesthetic review of the garage, I agree that this is very similar to other projects that we've seen recently. Personally, I like the effort to put windows on both sides on the north-facing side and the south-facing side. And given the tightness of some of the lots, I personally don't necessarily feel that the other two sides would need a window to break that up. But I think that the overall window placement on the new elevations really helps to break up the house a little bit also.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the side of that portico, you're gonna bring that fence forward a little bit, and then it'll be kind of a new section of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The brick patio is not, does not have border in it, correct? It's open?
Correct, right, so it doesn't count toward the lot coverage.
Any other questions, comments? variance for Grand Rapids Planning and Zoning Code, section 1155.02C3, to increase the maximum allowable lot coverage from 40% to 45%, 2,080 square feet, feet to 2,343, for a new one-story sunroom attached to the rear of existing two-story sunroom. For a new one-story sunroom attached to the rear of the existing two-story single-family.
I think you're on the wrong page.
Oh, for
No, that's-
heaven's sake.
That's what it says.
No, that's what it says right now.
There's actually an error in the agenda. That's correct. So the variances are for lot coverage, for side yard related to the portico and for aesthetic review.
So it's just item B and item C.
It is A is correct.
Okay.
B is actually correct up until where it says west property line for a new one-story, for a new, I should say, for a new open portico. Mine says everything. What do you-
Oh, it's A
The
that,
agenda was updated, but I don't think it was put in the packet.
Oh, I'm sorry. B is correct, yeah, B, the language on B is correct. The language for A, the percentage, the numbers are correct. But it is really just to correct,
The open side portico.
right, to correct an existing condition, and to permit the open side portico. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that way. Yeah, I was gonna try to pull up the online agenda, but I'll let you go.
all right, I make a motion to approve, BZA case 05-2022. Item A, the applicant is requesting a variance from Grandview Heights Planning and Zoning Section 1155.02C to increase the maximum allowable lot coverage from 40% to 45%, 2,080 square feet to 2,343 square feet, to correct an existing condition and to attach a new exterior portico. Item B, to approve a variance for section 1155.09A to reduce the side yard setback from 6 feet to 4 foot 10 feet along the west property line for a new open-sided portico addition. And for aesthetic review, section 1155.07 for the review of a new one-sided portico addition and the redesign of the front facade, as well as a storage addition over an existing garage.
I second.
Joe Souza,
Yes.
Scotsman,
Yes.
Knosky,
Yeah.
Calman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, BZA case number 3 for the night, case number 06-2022, 1205 Dover Avenue. Applicant is Lori K. Lair, and owner is Lori K. Lair and James Edwin Griffin Jr.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Danny Bob, perfect check for Mr. Griffin, and we're aware we're requesting quite a few setbacks on all around the building, of course, and some lot coverage setbacks there. The one good news is he's on the alley on the side of his commercial to the north of him and an alley to the back of him. The existing expansion in the back is using the existing footprint of the existing garage, His addition on the building for his greenhouse is sitting on top of the footprint of his existing house. He does want to cantilever it out 3 feet to accommodate his greenhouse that he has. And then back on the back, he's making his garage bigger so he can incorporate some solar panels back there, as well as a production area for his greenhouse. I've known Jim a few months now. He's very passionate about the energy, being energy conscious and self-sufficient, and the impact the human race is having on the world. And he's trying to better himself here and lessen his carbon footprint by doing this project. So I guess at this point, Jim is also here to respond to any questions anybody might have. And one of his neighbors is here too. She has some concerns he wants us to address. So I guess at this point, we'll just respond to any questions and comments you guys may have.
Yeah. Okay. Director Holter, staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. First, in terms of point of order, to be heard on the agenda for the board, there are actions that the city needs to take in terms of placing notices in the paper and on the subject property, which were completed, and the applicant endeavored to make notices but did not quite meet the letter of the requirement, which is to send. We understand that notices were sent via regular mail. They're required to be sent via certified mail, or you can hand deliver and get a signature from an owner at each of the properties that require notice for neighbors standing. Because that wasn't done, I've been advised by our legal department to advise you not to vote on this matter tonight. It can be heard, you can ask questions, receive testimony, but we would recommend putting a vote off until proper notice has been provided to the neighbors withstanding, and the applicant can come back next month.
I can understand that.
Okay. So with regard to the case, interesting project.
Yes, it is an interesting project.
Certainly
Yes,
an
it
interesting
is.
project. Yes. The location of the property is near the eastern edge of historic neighborhood. It's close to Grandview Yard, just south of 3rd Avenue, adjacent to the city of Columbus. If you know where the Feynman Machiucci and Shoppa building is, there on 3rd Avenue, black and white, kind of block painted building. It's just south of there. I included a few adjacency photographs so that you can see on page 2 and 3 that adjacency to commercial area. The general flavor of the neighborhood, the kind of smaller sub-neighborhood, if you will, within Grandview Heights that is in this area. It has a lot of single-story, kind of Cape Cod style homes, fairly small scale lots. The lots are actually quite small compared to minimum requirements. The site itself does step up a little bit. The alley is sloping up, and there's a little bit of a retaining wall to be a little bit more flat around the front yard there. But the house slopes up. I counted the steps, about 8 to 10 steps, which I can't totally tell off Google, but from the sidewalk up to the front door. There are a number of larger trees, which I kind of included in this case because from a solar efficacy perspective, I thought that was relevant to the case. There's a street tree in the tree lawn east of the home, several larger trees in the tree lawn in the front yard of the adjacent property to the south of the home, and there's a couple of trees. I couldn't tell whether one was on this property, the adjacent property, fairly close to the lot lines, and trees in the rear yard as well. No known cultural or historic features on the site. As I mentioned, it's relatively uniquely situated in the sense that it's adjacent to the city of Columbus and to existing commercial buildings there. Most of the structures in the area are the single-family, single-story structures. There is an apartment building straight across the street, just east of this home. There is existing sidewalks. All of that is in good shape. It's bordered by alleys on 2 sides, one in the city of Columbus and one in Grandview Heights. With regard to the lot, existing lot is 40 feet wide and 112 feet deep, for a total square footage of 4,480 square feet. In RS2, you're required 40 feet, so it complies there in terms of width, but 6,000 in terms of lot area, so it's really quite small in terms
terms of the lot area compared to a standard lot, and it's one of the smaller ones in the city. Permitted lot coverage for that smaller lot at 40% would be just 1,792 square feet. A compliant lot would allow 2,400 square feet. The requested coverage is 2,656 square feet, which is 59.3% of the actual lot as it sits. It would be 48% if the lot were of a compliant size. So 10% more would be permitted for a compliant lot then as well. Both of the individual side yard requests, as I mentioned in a prior case, one of the considerations with side yard is how far it's not only how far it goes sideways, but also how long that variance continues along the side yard. In this case, it is more or less, as I read the drawings anyway, the full length of the structure on both sides. The setbacks are required to be 6 feet each, 12 feet total. Setbacks requested would reduce those to 3.42 on one side, 4.25 on the other side, and just 7.67 of the total 12 feet required together. There is an existing garage on the lot. It's quite a shallow lot, so the applicant is proposing to cover not only the existing first story of the existing house, but also the garage with a second story addition, and connect the two on the first floor with a screened-in porch. Once you've attached the garage to the main structure, you've got a couple of additional criteria that come into play. The rear lot depth to the primary structure is required to be 22.4 feet in this case, 20% of the lot depth, and the reduction is down to just 2.66 feet. The second story also juts out a little bit in front. We didn't get measurements on exactly what the average setback is along that block, but it would be a change to that average setback in any event, so also pushing forward in front of the house a little bit. We appreciate the rendering. That was very helpful in terms of understanding
Yes.
What the proposal would look like. The provided rendering indicates a unique style. I would make note that the existing home looks to be that the siding would remain, sort of existing windows would remain, and then much more of a contemporary addition added on. In terms of considerations for aesthetic review, I itemized a few of them that turn up in the design guidelines. And just would also remind the board that the basic condition of review and approval has to do with you are at liberty to either review and approve, disapprove, or approve with conditions. And the standards, which are in code sections that are included later, have to do with whether the home is substantially too similar, substantially too different, or also, the last one, the inappropriateness in relationship to established character. So again, returning to the design guidelines, a few of the criteria that the design guidelines lay out include making an addition secondary to the original building, drawing cues from the original home, including proportions and spacing of windows, roof pitch, similar roofing materials, adding needed space while respecting the design integrity of the original home, forms and massing similar to those in the original structure, and then using materials that would have been common at the time that the original building was built, including such things as brick, stone, various types of siding. As I was mentioning, I think in this case you also have to look not only at the design guidelines, but and as always at the code requirements, as I just mentioned, with whether the home meets the approval or disapproval conditions having to do with excessive dissimilarity, excessive similarity, or inappropriateness with regard to nearby character. And then lastly, I think it's also relevant for the board to consider and be reminded in this case of the various dominant factors having to do with specifically the size and area request because of the substantial nature of the request in this case. So just a reminder of that condition. You know, as I say, I think that the project, of course, has aspirations that in general align with the community plan laid out by the community with regard to considerations for sustainability. I don't know a lot about the technical requirements that are being addressed by the design. I would be hopeful that there would be a project that could achieve the goals while also respecting the design guidelines and the standards for approval on the basis of aesthetic review and lot coverage, at least to give less substantive requests. However, as the case was presented to me, we were not really able to provide a positive recommendation simply on the existing code and design guidelines as they stand and as the project has been proposed. And so, again, due to the scale of the requests and really not having any, not enough information with regard to the need for those requests, we're not able to recommend approval for any of the lot coverage, side yard, rear yard, total side yard or front yard area variances. And similarly, would call out that the project appears to be excessively dissimilar and of a very different character than the neighborhood surrounding it. So we're also not able to recommend aesthetic review approval. With that, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
One question I had, do you have, I didn't see it at least anywhere, the current lot coverage number?
Do you have that on your site plan? Do you have the current lot coverage by chance?
No, I don't believe we have. Well, let's see.
I'm just trying to understand the current condition.
We have the current area under roof is, the new area under roof is 2366. The total site is, as you said, was 4480, I believe. I have my glasses on here. Existing area under roof was 1898, and we're looking to go to 2366.
I think it's 1893.
Or 1893.
Sorry,
We're going to go to, that's okay, I have my glasses on. And looking to go to 2366.
Or with the garage, potentially 2656 is what we're showing on the request. 2656, is that correct?
I would say, guys, if I can, in regards to lot coverage, as you mentioned, Amanda, this is an awful small site, and on a regular site, we wouldn't be talking about that right now, if I understood you correctly. So I'd like to put that into the mix here. From a aesthetic perspective, Mr. Griffin and I have spoke. There are some things that we could do to, this is what he likes and is dreaming of right here. That's why it's drawn up like this. But I think to make his project go, we could look at doing something on the front facade here to improve it, help it blend in with the neighborhood more. But Mr. Griffin can speak more to that.
To answer your question, if I'm doing my math right, based on the square footage that is existing today and the size of the lot is currently 42.25% lot coverage.
And that includes the garage, which the garage is not there, correct?
Well,
It's the pad
we're
that's
building
there.
on top of the existing garage. Well, we actually putting on the footprint of the existing garage and making it a little bit bigger.
Okay, but that
So we're on the
42.25
original footprint of the garage,
includes
yes.
the existing pad, okay.
For the board, the 26 number includes sidewalks, et cetera.
Okay.
You know, and we based our calculations based on this footprint of the site plan, and then added the sidewalks and those things. So that number is close, if not.
And I would say you're good about that, Mr.
Yeah.
Bishop, because he had the lot surveyed and stuff. This is
Yeah.
all based on the survey.
Does the, you want to open up for public comment? I apologize. Do you want to open up for public comment?
Yes, I do, because I know, Megan, do you want to, I know there were a couple
Yes.
emails that came in for public comment, and then also if there is anybody else here who would
Yes.
like to speak.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So, bear with me. We received public comment from 95 West 3rd Avenue. The proposal modification renovation patio has been reviewed. I am not opposed to adding a second story to the home. However, the proposed modifications would yield an ultra-modern look to the home and provide it with a commercial building appearance. The appearance of the building does not fit in well with the 1940s vintage of the neighborhood homes. And lastly, there was 1420 Ingles Avenue. I'm unable to attend the meeting scheduled for this evening, May 11th, due to being out of town. I'd like to provide comments regarding BZA case 07-2022. 1205 Dover Avenue. I believe this request should be rejected for the few reasons. The number of the variances requested is excessive, 6 in parentheses, including a few that are very significant. Increase in lot coverage from 40% to 59.3%, reduction in rear yard requirement of 22.4 feet to 2.66 inches, reduction of front yard requirement, detail of various requests not specified. While understanding the need for some flexibility regarding zoning when remodeling older homes, particularly when the existing use is non-conforming and grandfathered, and quotations, this request is excessive. Approval of this request would establish a precedent that setbacks and lot coverage are completely optional. Best regards, Eric Snyder.
Are those the only two that?
Those are the only two that I'm aware of.
Is there anybody else who's here that would like to speak regarding this project? And I just want to check, you took the oath, right, when you came in?
I'm sorry?
Did you take the oath when you
Yes,
came in? Okay.
yes, I did. I'm Karen Huber, I live right next door,
Can you state your address also, please?
1201 Dover Avenue.
Thank you.
Okay, so some of my questions were the size that it's, the footprint that it is now to what it was going to if it was approved, how much larger that was going to be and how much more space. Also, the aesthetic look was a big thing. It looks very commercial, doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. And I was a little concerned, and I'm not sure if the garage is going to be on the same footprint. There's already issues with trying to turn right into that alley because of the retaining wall. And I didn't know if the new structure would also interfere any more than, with that. I know one neighbor at the end of the alley has taken out the wall a couple of times, making that turn, because you've got the posts from the building at the end of the street on 3rd Avenue. They have concrete posts or whatever, so you don't hit their building, so you're trying to juggle. So those were kind of like my big things, and then any if it came out any further, the garage, if it would interfere with service trucks or trash services, fire trucks, anything like that, that might have to get in. And that pretty much sums up. I'm not against, his greenhouse and things like that. It's just the size on the lot and the look, the front look. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Make some comments?
Is there anybody else? Any other comments?
Yes, no.
I didn't get to say the oath or whatever, because I was like, Susan, and I don't live close, so this.
Well, yeah, we'll have to do
sorry.
the oath. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, Susan Knoll, 1308 Westwood Avenue, Columbus. Like I said, I have no neighborhood, I'm not a neighbor right there. My only concern is the precedence of further variations, since this has so many of them. So, building's going on everywhere, and I understand that, but I just wanted to put that in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're obviously getting the feel for the vibe, what's going on here. So I guess Jim's going to make some compromise. I guess need to get some feedback from the board, what we could do to flip this around to be a more positive outcome. Obviously, probably some of these setbacks would want to be reduced, I'm guessing. And then some more different curb appeal on the building. Would we do those types of things? Would that have a more positive effect for the board?
Well, I guess, would you like us to go through and individually tell you some of our concerns or our thoughts on the project?
That'd be great.
Do you want to start, Carol? Or,
I'll save some of my comments for later. I'm not opposed simply based on the number of variances, because with some of the non-conforming properties especially, there's a lot more challenges where this item on a conforming lot may only have 1 or 2 variances, whereas the same project on non-conforming opens up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
I'm glad to hear you. I'm glad to hear you say that. Yes.
So it's not simply based on the number of variances. The size of variances is excessive based on similar variances in the past. I enjoy looking for ways to reduce, carbon footprints, also self-sufficiency, solar. Some of those cases have been to the board. We're seeing more of an appetite for that in the area, so that's something that we're definitely open to, which also lends itself into variances,
Yes.
simply based on those projects alone. I just think that the project as proposed is a little too forward from what the community is looking for, as far as incorporating some of those desires and items that you're wishing to have, and balancing that with the challenge of the property itself. But I certainly appreciate that the work that's and the thought process that goes into just so much of a project like this.
A couple questions I had. Where on the roof are the solar panels going to go? Are they just on the garage portion?
Yes, that's correct. They'd be on the back portion here.
So what size system are you proposing? Kilowatt hour?
Comment on that, Jim?
Total of 16.5 kW, 10 of which is on the garage, 6 of which is suspended from the structure of the greenhouse. And a special type of it's a custom photovoltaic panel that does both electric and hot water production.
So we're covering up the greenhouse itself.
This might be a time for me to step forward here and give you a little bit of my background so you get a flavor of why this whole thing has come to exist as it is now. I'd like to take that opportunity if I might.
if you'd like to step up to the podium.
Sure. I'm not feeble. I had my hip replaced on March 29th, so it's still a little struggle. I became interested in energy in
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can you please just, we know who you are, but can you state for the record, can you state your name and address, please?
My name is Jim Griffin. I live at 1205 Dover Avenue, Columbus, Ohio, 43212. Started becoming a serious college student in 1973 after bumming around in Florida for a while, and my training as a biologist and my concentration emphasis was in environmental and ecological aspects of that discipline. During my, I initially went to school to be a surgeon. I'm a mechanically inclined person, and good.
Okay.
And surgery and mechanics are very similar. My daughter's a surgeon, by the way. She took care of that impulse for me. when, I was distracted from that because when I started learning about energy, I said, holy cow, because energy is the most important thing in modernity. And I thought I might dabble in it a little bit. So in 1978, I started selling and installing solar water heaters in Detroit, Michigan, which was a pretty ambitious but rather naive endeavor, but a good learning experience. I'm a master carpenter. I spent many years doing fine woodworking in very impressive venues in Detroit, Michigan primarily. Done a bit of work down here. For 4 years I worked as an electrician here for Efficient Electric. I had wanted to have a job, but I was done with woodworking because nobody wants to do good work anymore. So I started working for this electrical company, and they laid me off, and I suddenly had some time on my hands. I've been thinking about this project all of my life, frankly. I've spent about 15 years of my career in various renewable energy industries. Beginning in 1995, I helped build, at the time, the largest remote PV system in the world on Lake Powell, which has been in the news lately because Lake Powell, which was at one time an incredible body of water, has disappeared, as long as Lake Mead. It's jarring to me because I, one night, was motoring up Lake Powell in the moonlight with a couple of my colleagues, and we couldn't go any further because we were afraid of hitting rocks that submerged us below the surface of water. So we pulled the boat up onto the shore and rolled out our sleeping bags and slept there that night. It was unbelievable. You don't have any idea how many stars there are up there until you go to a place like Lake Powell. In addition to that, I worked on wind turbines for 4 years, kind of figuring out what all of that is about, and learned in 2012 about Chinese greenhouses and aquaponic cultivation. And that for me was the full circle. Now I finally found the way to take all of my experiences, all of my education, all of my passion, and congeal it into this one idea, which is zero net energy, year-round cultivation of nutritious foods with no fossil fuel inputs. That's pretty cool. And so that's what I want to build in my house. And quite frankly, I really, first of all, I need to address the thing about the envelopes, okay? My neighbor is proof positive that I actually did mail those, and I apologize for not having sent them certified mail. Had I just perhaps had one more hint besides page 4, page 9, and oh, by the way, certified mail, we would be having this conversation right now, but we are. Nevertheless, I, in good faith, attempted to retrieve those envelopes to the parties. A couple of them I've reached, they've thrown them away already. I retrieved a few of them. I have them in my good here, but yeah, I did that. And frankly, I'm offended that you would not accept my word that I did in good faith contact the people that it was requested of me to do so. And I understand, yes, not really. But again, Karen Huber, she got hers and everybody else did too. So anyway, I'm just trying to figure out why it is that in light of the current global situation, just before I came here tonight, I was watching a 5-minute clip regarding the situation about the availability and the cost of diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is the fuel of modernity. Without diesel fuel, all of this stops. You do realize this, don't you? If there's no more diesel, everything stops. It's gone. No more trucks. 3 days. 3 days, diesel fuel gone, giant eagle, no food on it. And as the British said, we're 3 meals away from a revolution. So I'm taking this upon myself to demonstrate to people that there are ways that we can deal with reality as it exists today. I'm going to ask this question of the board, and I ask this question of people because energy is the most important topic of modernity. I'm curious if anybody up here knows what the daily crude oil consumption of the United States is.
Well, they're not going to answer,
We
Jim.
have, well.
I'm sorry,
Hold
this
on.
is important.
Let me interject though. The board is not obligated to answer questions from an applicant.
Okay.
You're
So-
invited to provide testimony.
Pardon me?
You're invited to provide testimony.
I'm probably providing testimony because my thought is that I don't think any of you people fully understand the precarity of the global energy situation right now. I don't think you have a clue.
But Jim, can I interject here?
Sure.
I believe they do understand the situation. The situation here is, you've got a great concept here, and like I've been mentioning to you, we need to get it more fitting with the neighborhood. If we get it more fitting with the neighborhood, I believe everybody will vote yes for your
Okay,
project.
a couple of things then. First of all, your survey of my neighborhood failed to recognize that this will be the third house on our block that has had a second story added to it in the last couple of years. One took place a few years ago. There is another one underway right now. I would be the third one. So in fact, we would become the majority of the houses on that type. I have a photo I want to show it to you. Is there a way that we could get that up on the screen
I don't think
somehow?
there is. No, he has a photo on his phone. He wanted to
I do have
just
my
bounce
laptop.
around
Is
it.
there a way that I could?
You
get
can, yeah, I have an HDMI cord, you can just hook right up to the laptop,
Okay.
if that would work.
Your discretion.
Should reach.
Oh, okay, very good.
Ooh, man, I don't think I have
I don't have that type of
This is
connection
a-
data.
Can you email it to me, or is it on the?
No, I could email you this picture.
Yeah, and I can,
Is there an internet connection?
yes, it's,
You could just pass your phone around.
No, I think this needs to be seen in a much larger.
Is this,
Okay.
could you tell us what this photo is about that you'd like to show us?
He's going to be
Pardon?
showing you a photo of a garage, two-story addition on a garage. That's very similar, very close to the alley like he's proposing.
In Grandview?
Yes. It's in Grandview, right, Jim?
Yes, at the corner of First Avenue and Willard, by the way.
Would you be able to send that to Megan so that we have it on record as well? And I think after this, I think we'd like to discuss a little bit more about your project. And I think I at least have a couple of questions. I think everybody else does as well. But specifically regarding the project and
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't- So I don't have a Wi, I only have a 4G
Is there
signal. I don't think I could be able to send this to you that way. I'll try it. But where where should I send it?
building, or, actually, let me give you my first, and
Should
then-
it be an email? Or,
Yes. So, M as in Megan,
oh, I think I have yours.
oh, okay.
Well, at one time,
What is that picture on this computer here?
yeah, it's on here.
I want you to put it up and go ahead and show it to me, repeat it to me for the record. I'll go ahead and show it to the board, you can go ahead and email that, and you'll get a feel for what you're talking about.
So I guess as you're wrapping up, if you want to, I think that your history is very important and is helpful, but if you could speak a little bit about your house and maybe some of the specific requirements of the photovoltaic system and then also the agricultural system and what those needs are, because I think, speaking for myself, but I think everybody else would agree to some extent that we don't know the full specifics of.
Wonderful, let me show them that, and then go ahead and answer the
I'm
questions
sorry,
that she just spoke about.
Oh, that's okay. If you could speak to us a little bit about, specifically about your house and your
Mhm.
project, and some of the specific requirements that, and all of the components that, not necessarily in detail, but just a summary of what goes into all of these systems in your house and what necessitates the square footage and the size of.
The square footage is a function of maximizing the square footage of the greenhouse, because the bigger the greenhouse, the more productive it can be. That's the only reason it's that dimension. It's a design feature for me in the sense that the cantilever adds a certain degree of interest to the design. I will be fully honest with you about I'm not happy with the east elevation of the greenhouse. I'm still not happy with it. It does look clunky, and I'm trying to figure out how to deal with that, because the Chinese greenhouse, which is the type of greenhouse I'm building, which is an elliptical design, and that is true exclusively due to the energy requirements of any type of a zero net energy greenhouse. All the other walls, the east, west, north walls, are opaque and heavily insulated. Half of the roof is an opaque roof, and the lens is a 2-ply of a building material that's known as ETFE, which is the most productive and the best suited glazing material for greenhouses in the greenhouse world. Greenhouses are not as well known in North America as they are in Europe. The greenhouse industry in Europe is staggeringly huge, and rooftop greenhouses are becoming a major trend in all parts of the EU right now. To describe what I'm doing here is taking what I consider to be the least productive part of the house, the roof, which tends to leak occasionally and leaks energy like crazy, and I'm replacing it with a structure that will provide all of the electricity that my household will ever need for the rest of our lives, and all the food that my family will ever need to have to continue on living the life that we live. I speak about this to many people, and invariably, present company notwithstanding, the reaction is always, that is an incredible idea, and it is an incredible idea. I'm not trying to, I would like to, I find it kind of a little curious, because Lori and I we've done an extensive renovation on our house. We've turned it into what I consider to be a very attractive property. We've put lots of money, huge number of hours. I've done all of the work myself primarily, except for the last garden thing, because we could have somebody do it this time, but 130-foot retaining wall I built myself. I redid the entire exterior of the house myself, including stripping it down to the studs and then rebuilding it. I have a very good house. And now I could have a house that is actually a house that a lot of people would like to have. And I'm pretty sure that were this to be brought to fruition, there would people come to me and say, man, I would like to do that to my house. And I'm pretty sure that would happen. And I think that's a good thing to happen, because I think that the things that I'm trying to do are the things that our society really needs to start taking very seriously. I don't need to do this. I'm retired, man. I am making more money now retired than I've ever made in my life working 40 hours a week. It's insane, but I did some right things. I worked hard on my life. Social Security has proved to be the most incredible thing I've ever had. It cost me $100,000, not me, it cost $100,000 to have a hip replaced. Did you know that? $100K.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let's talk more about how we
Talk
can
about
get
the
this
house.
thing to where they want it to be. Let's talk more about that.
So what do I would need to do?
Well, can you do some curb appeal, like I mentioned to you? We can put a gable end on the end of this
We
thing.
could do that.
We could do that, put a gable end on, instead of the flat thing you want, we put a gable end on there and help be more competitive with the rest of the neighborhood. I think, if I'm hearing very right, if we reduce these overhangs some, that's gonna be a plus for us.
Would you like us to go through and state our individual?
Yeah, I think I'll continue doing
comments?
this, you can hear the rest of what they say, Jim, okay? I think they know where you're coming from, they know what's in your heart, and how we wanna do so.
Yes, and thank you very much for speaking
Okay.
and helping us understand where you're coming from a little bit more. My thoughts on this are very similar to what Joe has said, is that I think that these are all great ideas and great concepts, and I think that they're important and becoming more important daily. However, I think that I would like to see these things addressed, and I think that they probably could be addressed in a slightly smaller scale. So similar to what we were speaking about earlier, that the variance for the covered portico covers a smaller percentage of that lot line. The overhangs on each of these, on each sides of the facade, the north and the south, covers actually 75% of the entire lot line distance. So from a scale perspective, that is a very large scale. And that's a very large scale, I think, to ask of your neighbors and in regards to other projects as well. And I think part of the thing with this project also is, I think I understand why the garage and the house are brought together, but it also makes the house seem much more massive than what I think it is, and I wonder if you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
I think what needs to happen is that there has to be an elevation drawn of the north
I'm
side
sorry,
of the
can I
building.
finish speaking, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
Thank you. I think we'd like to go through and address what our comments
Yes,
were,
yes,
and then we
please.
can have a discussion. I think that the facade of this, each of the sides do not relate very much to the existing house, and they do not relate very much to any of the other houses in the area. I think that they are excessively dissimilar to the area. So I think, my other thought is, and I think some of this is it's just not noted on the plans, is I would like to see more description in your submittals of what we're looking at and why we're looking at it. Like, what are the materials and the elevations? Where are the solar panels? What is the materiality of the roof? What are the requirements that are going into making this the scale and the layout and design that it is? And I think that those things would all help us better understand what we're looking at.
We can definitely give you a floor plan to show what's going on up there and stuff like that.
And I think also regarding the overhangs, and some of the plants that are on the property, I feel like you were gonna lose a lot of those plants due to the size of those overhangs if they were to be as deep as they
So
are.
he feels pretty good about his plants not being affected by the overhangs. I
Yeah.
agree with him on that.
So I think
We
those
have,
are,
Still get plenty of
we
sun.
have a landscaping on the north side of the house which is flourishing, and it's not going to be affected at all by overhang. And
I'm sorry, can I let our other board members speak as well? I think.
Sure. First off, sir, I want to say thank you for your, passion for this project and for the community as well. I don't have, any issues with what you're trying to do or use with your property. I think that's all very admirable, what you're trying to accomplish. It's simply, I think, in this case, the design, just following suit with a lot of what Dave said is, I think this is the use to the passion, desire for what you're doing. We all can, feel that passion and respect that. Like was said already, I think some more views of the house would help and understanding more what's going on. But overall, I think just the setback and the variances that are being requested are just I would be curious to see what you can try to do in a smaller footprint. You know, I guess one question I would have for the design itself, understanding the solar part of it, is if you plan to also house any battery storage on the
Yes.
site as well? Yes. Okay, is that within the house itself, or is that going to be on external?
It's in the
property?
garage.
Okay.
Okay, it's got to have a special room for that.
Okay. So yeah, this is one question I had about the design itself, but I won't repeat too much of what's already been said, other than just keeping with the character of the community. I think is really important in this case, and trying to blend the house in more with the surrounding community. But additionally, I think trying to explore how we can better use the space. I understand the desire to maximize output, but trying to find some sort of compromise within maximizing output and what might be a better fit for the community.
Mostly consistent, and like they said, I drive an electric vehicle for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, and so I'm on board with the goal. Is part of the Chinese design, is it that?
No, that
So
is my clumsy way of trying to figure out how to camouflage the profile of the greenhouse, because I'm the first to admit is in the situation that it exists, I'm not happy with it. I'm trying to make it obscure. That's why it's like that. And my intention was to attempt to approach a mid-century modern flair. And I think possibly part of the detailing around that makes it look clumsier than it ultimately would be in real life. And
How high?
Cut me loose, Jim, cut me loose, is all I ask. Let me play around with that front facade a little bit.
All
And the thing
right.
in the back, we can put gables on that
yeah,
and make it match and things like we talked
I
about.
mean, maybe
so-
we could do a hip there. I mean, I love hip roofs.
Can we put a little porch on the front of that thing or something, you know what I mean? I mean, there's things we could do. Jim.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
My other question, how high is, maybe it's just scaling of the elevation, how high is the green?
it's 10 feet.
Okay.
The second story is 10 feet.
I think for the next submittal, I agree, it would be helpful to see a few more dimensions. especially-
Sure. Yeah, we can put them.
I think some of it is, at least for me, is the color contrast, and it's not an Ohio to Michigan thing, just.
I haven't mentioned
yellow
Brad, by the way. I didn't know if I should mention that.
The yellow of the existing house, well, I understand that actually is the one that's maintaining the current aesthetic. I just don't know if it is complementary to, again, I get this one rendering, to what we're going for here. But I think additional dimensions, and there are some floor plans here are helpful, but I guess as it relates to, you mentioned that the bigger the greenhouse, the more food. I've never built a greenhouse. Is there a formula for X square feet equals an X amount of yield for food? I mean, to me, something that would be this large would be more than you could possibly.
The greenhouse that I am proposing is based on a system designed by an Australian aquaponics, and it is thought to be able to produce sufficient foodstuffs for, in this case, 8 people year-round, 12 months a year, continuous production.
And is the idea that it would always be fresh, or you would have to can?
Always fresh, always fresh. It's a blend of aquaculture and hydroponics, which is called aquaponics. And aquaponics is a growing protocol which utilizes natural bacteriological processes that convert fish waste into nitrogenous fertilizer. That fertilizer is then circulated through different types of growing medium. And in those different growing mediums, we can grow all of the wonderful foodstuffs that I see when I walk into Giant Eagle Market Square and say, that's what I want to grow in my greenhouse, the stuff that you see when you walk in there. In addition to that, I am able to produce, I'll harvest the fish regularly, tilapia, and probably some prawns, something like that, that can also grow.
So how many people live in the household?
2 of us.
So I guess that's kind of why does the system even generate for 8 people if there's 2 people living in the house?
Because I have 2 daughters and 4 granddaughters, and I expect that sometime in the foreseeable future, they're going to be able to benefit from my endeavors. Let's leave it that way.
We do have an overall building height, by the way, up here, 22 feet.
I guess one last question I would have is, just understanding this is for a residential scale solar, it's a large solar unit. Have you guys done any studies to understand glare effects or incidents of absorption rates? Have you done any solar studies to understand, like if there's any glare issues or if there's any, what your rate of absorption is, if you have any interference from surrounding buildings, trees?
No, I have a perfect solar easement for my application. And,
We're going to want to provide them that information.
yeah, and
You don't want
because of
something
being behind the
somebody
parapets, they're be very, very, I'm actually not a big fan of solar mounted, roof mounted solar. I'm more of a dual axis tracker kind of a guy, but I wasn't even going to go there here in Grandview Heights, so that would,
Well,
even I knew that was.
We want to show them, give them some cut sheets of the panels you want and show them how they're non-reflective. That's the point he's trying
Yes,
to do.
I think that would be very
That'd be
helpful.
helpful. Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Because you look at that building, remember that building over in England was so reflective it melted cars across the street. Did you guys hear about that? It was just in the news last year.
Well, a solar collector absorbs all of the radiant energy incident upon it. There's no reflective.
Well, they just want that.
So one last kind of thought / question, did you look at all of doing the greenhouse above the garage?
No. That's
We wanted above his house, but it's more
the-
accessible there.
That's where the primary solar system is going, is in the garage. That's a roof mounted system. The other, the panels, the PV panels in the greenhouse they're a louver type configuration. They're suspended from the arc segments that define the support structure of the greenhouse, and they are intended to both produce electricity, hot water, but even more importantly, they are intended to reduce the amount of sunlight incident into the greenhouse, because it's not a problem heating a greenhouse, it's cooling a greenhouse that's the problem. And these panels are unique to my association with this German fellow who is among the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life, and it is truly a genius concept, and I've had the luxury of being able to avail myself of it, and I expect that I will be making some of these again in the very near future.
I think, do all of our comments, I think, actually, let me ask you guys first. Do any of the rest of the board have any additional comments? Do our comments today help provide you with?
Most definitely,
some-
yeah, most definitely. I said you need to scale back somewhat, Jim, and get it more in keeping with the neighborhood as we discussed. So, and I think we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just going to come down to, are you willing to compromise how much? Now, I guess the next question would be is, I know you can't make a decision on that right now, but you want to maximize, but at the same time, if we cut the overhangs in half of what they are now, would that be more conducive to you guys? I know you approved one earlier, but at 4 feet. One of ours is only 4 foot.
I think we
Side
have to
yards.
see in relation to the design, the new proposed design.
Okay.
There are some legal standards that they are obligated to consider,
Mhm.
and I can provide those to you.
Please do, please do. You have my email addresses on that somewhere. You have it somewhere. I'm sure Mr. Boucher has it.
As, as we normally do, we do a pre-application meeting, so before the next hearing. So if you could come
I'd
together.
love to do that.
On your design.
Get a better feel for where
Get
we're
with,
going, yes.
Liz and myself, and we can look at it to see if we're headed in the right direction. I think.
I think we can definitely do that, prefer to do that. Just want to get some feedback today was the main goal.
Yeah.
We knew we were up here for some discussion, so. Good to go, Jim,
Yep,
on this
I'm
concept
good.
now? Okay, very good. Okay, thank you, guys, and then I'll just get together with you, and we try to get next month. Do you think that's possible?
That's up to you, really.
Well, I mean, if we get this stuff together, we could do it, okay?
Yes, you
So
can.
if we want to push, we can do that, then if not, it'll be the month after. But, it may be the month after, I don't know, we're so busy right now, but we'll see if we can get worked out. Thank you so much for your input, I appreciate it. Thanks.
I'll make a motion to table this case until further review.
Second.
Thank you very much. Demetri?
Yes.
Thanks for your input, man.
LaSusa?
Yes.
Gutzman?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes. Is there any other business? Any staff communications?
Feels wonderful for you. I knew.